Lastly, as part of the events topic, we will talk about the order and the moment in which they are executed. We will briefly talk about the execution order of the list and the detail when they are loaded for the first time, and then we will see what happens when a client event is triggered when these objects are already open. The same will apply to smart device panels and to the list. For those that have smart device components, the same as for the detail will apply. If we're opening a list, they will be executed in this order. The client start event on the client, and then the start, refresh, and load events on the server if we're using an online architecture. If the object opened is the detail, they will be executed in this order. First, the client start of the detail, which is a client event, followed by the start, refresh, and load events of the detail itself, and server events. Next, these same events will be executed for each section, starting from the general section. The same will happen if it's a panel with smart device components instead of sections. Once the screen has been loaded, regardless if it's the list or the detail, the user can start interacting. What happens when the user triggers an action? The associated code is executed on the client side, that is to say, on the device. If a call is found to a REST procedure, data provider, or business component, the call is made, waiting for the result in order to continue running the rest of the code on the client. In other words, the REST service is invoked, and when the service responds with JSON data, the code that comes next is executed. Note that in any case, the system events start, refresh, and load are not executed, unless a refresh command is found in the user events code. What happens in this case? A trip to the server is made, and if the data hasn't been changed, nothing is brought to the client. Otherwise, the refresh and load events of every grid not based on an SDT are executed. A particular case happens when the refresh command is run in a client event of a detail section. For example, in the ladder. In this case, the events for the detail node and the sections that had been previously enabled will be run. If a section has not been enabled, they are not executed, except for those inline sections that will always be enabled. We suggest reading more information about this in our wiki. Remember everything we've talked about for when we study offline applications in a few seconds. This has been everything about events. Next, we will talk about a set of objects that can be invoked and how to do so, including the invocation options available to achieve certain effects.